Hey, Samir. You clicked this video so you probably want to learn programming and don't know where or how to start. If it seems too overwhelming, don't be, and first calm down. You can do it. It's all about building up in steps and moving on. Remember, what I will tell you here are the concepts you will need to learn and the steps you should take or could take. However, to know when, where, or how to use those concepts all comes from practice. So, a tip is to try to watch tutorials only as a starting point to guide yourself. Everything else comes from practice. You don't have to build this huge project or a next Uber to practice. Just complete a small task with the knowledge you just learned. You can even refer to sources or Stack Overflow, Google, whatever you want, and look up. Making mistakes is always a part of learning. The more you practice, the more you will get a hang of it. So let's start, I guess. Oh, and before I proceed, I just want to let you know this video is mostly for new programmers, and if you have some experience with programming, you might know a lot of these things already. And these are just the topics or concepts I've been seeing time and again while being engaged in this sector. First, if you want to program, you surely need to choose a programming language. It is a language you use to code a program. There are many arguments on which programming language is the best and what's better, but it's mostly all about preference and what you want to do. Well, for beginners, this itself might be kind of overwhelming considering how many are out there, but don't think too much about it. If you know the concepts of one programming language and can solve a problem with it, then it's not that difficult to translate that skill into another programming language. It's mostly learning the syntax. But still, I guess you got to choose one for now. If you want the simple option, beginners tend to opt for Python due to its English-like syntax. Python is also widely used for data science, machine learning, and can also be used for server-side code. The other popular option is JavaScript, which you probably may have heard many times and is used everywhere in the web. The third I could recommend is C# because I guess I use it, but it might be a tidbit difficult for a new programmer to get into. Unity also uses C#, so you can use this for game development, though the general consensus for making AAA games is using C++, I believe. I may be wrong, but in general, they all can be used for making mostly any type of application. I'll say to go with JavaScript here as it's easy to learn, it's widely used, popular, and has a lot of resources so that you can learn very easily and create any type of application. If you opt for JavaScript, you can create full-stack application with only JavaScript as a language. Now, before creating files to code in, you need an editor or an IDE to easily write code in. You can use your own editor or IDE of your choice, but for JavaScript, I'll recommend you Visual Studio Code for now. You can download it from code.visualstudio.com/download. The link will be in the description. You can find many videos on how to set them up. Now, once you've done that, normally after you choose a programming language, what you have to know is how to install the language, how to set up the files, and how to run the code. IDEs make running codes easier, but you should also try to know how they can be run using a terminal. After you get a hang of these, you might want to check out how that certain programming language compiles or interprets the code you have written to machine code. These are mostly theory portions of the code. Now after this, the first thing you come across is printing hello world to a console in every programming tutorial ever. Then you move on to variables, constants, and data types. Every programming language has their own set of data types which you can easily refer to with a simple Google search. After learning these concepts, you can move on to operators, conditional statements, loops, and functions. In functions, you should also look into the ways values can be passed, like by_ref and by_val. Though, if I recall correctly, you can't pass by_ref in some languages, so be wary of that. By now, you probably can write and automate simple tasks and programs if you learn the concepts I just told you. The next step will be to learn about string manipulation, enums, casting, or changing one data type from one type to another, and using arrays. You might also want to know how libraries and packages are installed, used, and stored and managed in your respective language. Next comes one of the core concepts in programming, which is the object-oriented programming. You will need to learn about structs, objects, classes, constructors, destructors, encapsulation, polymorphism, inheritance, abstraction, interfaces. Once you grasp these concepts, try to apply them in a mini project or a task. If you can get hang of these, then congrats, you took a huge leap in your steps to learn how to code. And if all this seems overwhelming, just take it one step at a time. Just take your time, do one or two of the topics I just mentioned and make a mini project out of it. Now you can move on by learning more about concepts like memory management, generic types, exception handling. You can even try out different libraries your programming languages have to offer. Remember, these libraries mostly uses the concepts you have learned so far, and you just have to apply them. Depending on your programming language, you should also learn stuff like multithreading, attributes or decorators, whatever they are called in your language, events and event handling, file handling, async and await, arrow functions or lambda functions. Next, before working with the framework or other languages, try to create a simple application with a graphical user interface from the libraries your languages has to offer, and with a database that can store simple data and perform a create, read, update and delete operation on that database. In order to connect with the database, you will probably need to learn on how databases work, how SQL statements work, and what connection strings are and how they are used to integrate your code to your database. Once you create that application, you will be ready to work with the framework, and you will find out that they make everything a lot easier. It might seem scarier at first, seeing all the files and the project structure, but they have a lot of things set up and done for you already so that you can easily start working on it. Now comes the part where it all depends on what you want to do. You could also look into data structures and algorithms, time complexity, and how data can be stored and manipulated. Though, you don't need to be a master at them to go further. Just know them. If you are looking to get into a big tech company though, then you will have to practice a lot of these problems. For that, use LeetCode or AlgoExpert. If you want to start front-end coding, you have to know some HTML, CSS, JavaScripts and stuffs related to them like ECMAScript, CSS preprocessors, DOM manipulation, media queries, flex, grids, CSS frameworks, promise, etc. You might even want to learn about TypeScript and NPM. After that, you can choose any front-end framework you want from React, Angular or Vue. Then it's all about learning the structure of the framework, how it runs and how you can make your application. Some reoccurring concepts I see in frameworks that you can look into are lifecycle hooks, dependency injection, components, module, routing, data binding, HTTP requests, interceptors, forms and validations. Once you get a hang of the front-end framework, you can choose your back-end framework in any language. How you communicate with them is through an API request, so learn about JSON, APIs and REST APIs. Some back-end framework options are Django, Express, .NET Core, Spring, Laravel, etc. In these two, you have to learn how the project structure is set up and how they are run. A lot of concepts will come repeated here like middlewares, dependency injection, controllers, models, DTOs, caching, logging, authentication, authorization, and concepts like cores. You might even come across JWT bearer tokens and refresh tokens, session management, and state management. Working in backend makes you work a lot with databases, so choose a database type and stick with it. You don't necessarily need to know SQL here, but you could try look into what object relational mapping is and what code first pattern is. Once you look into these topics, try making a simple application with a login and register page with a home page performing a create, read, update and delete operation on a simple type of data, and make sure to store that data in a database. Make sure to use both front-end and back-end framework to make this application. Once you know these, it's all about working with other people. Learning Git, knowing about Webpacks, learning how production works, what container is, what Docker is, what AWS Azure has to offer. Your learning will never stop, so you should also never stop asking questions, however dumb it may seem. If you made till this part of this video, Damn, I'm impressed. What I laid out was what I have experienced being and working in this sector and the topics I keep coming across. Lastly, I would like to close off this video by saying, just take it slow and practice more. It's all about patience. And I hope you have a great day. See ya!